Alright, y'all, I'm here for your daily cut into what happened in the NBA on Saturday, December 26th. We had a 10-game slate that was full of production, full of action. We had some OT thrillers, and overall, it was just kind of funny because everyone seemed to agree that this slate was just so much better than the Christmas Day games. It was kind of, very 2020-esque, but either way, I'm going to be talking a little bit about each of the games, and I will be timestamping each and every one in the description in case you want to skip around and just, get my initial thoughts on everything. So, without further ado, let's hop right in. In the first game of the day, the Hawks handled the Grizzlies behind 36-9 from Trae Young, while Kevin Huerter had 21 off the bench, and in addition to that, DeAndre Hunter and John Collins both had double-doubles. Meanwhile, John Morant had 28 in the losing effort for the Grizzlies. I think this game was a true testament to how deep this Hawks roster is. They came in without already missing Clint Capella, Danilo Gallinari, and Onyeka Okongwu. John Collins got into some early foul trouble, and then Bogdanovic was just having a terrible off night, couldn't hit any shots, yet this Hawks team still found a way to win. Maybe it was just because it was reminiscent of last season's team where Trae Young was able to just backpack while some other guys chipped in with some smaller contributions, but ultimately it was enough to get the win. Either way, it should be a scary sight for the back half of that Eastern Conference due to the fact that this Hawks team is right now currently being projected to be kind of a second half playoff team in those lower seeds, and if they're able to do something like this against a pretty solid team like the Grizzlies, it's a scary sight for the rest of the Eastern Conference. And on a more minor note, rookie Nathan Knight from William & Mary, I guess I had literally never heard of this guy prior to last night's game. He dropped 14 in his NBA debut for the Atlanta Hawks. Actually, I don't know if it was his debut. He might have played in their first game, but either way, apparently this might be a thing. I just wanted to throw his name out there for those of you who also probably did not know who he was, but yep, that's a thing. And for the Grizzlies, John Morant follows up his big 44-point performance with another solid night, but this Grizzlies team, Jaren Jackson Jr. remains out. They're missing DeAnthony Melton, so they're able to stick around for most of this game, but they just seem like they're a piece away, at least from what I saw last night. They were down a few guys. It's not saying that the Hawks weren't, but the Grizzlies, for them, Jaren Jackson Jr. and DeAnthony Melton are two very important pieces to their roster and their defense and scoring in general. So, it was an off night. These nights happen. Grizzlies, they're definitely still contenders to get into one of those last playoff spots. We'll just have to see what happens. In the Thunder Hornets game, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander proved that he's ready to take on a bigger role by hitting a game-winning deep midi right before the buzzer ended after the Thunder almost blew a lead to the Charlotte Hornets. Shai led the team with a 24, 9, and 7 stat line, while George Hill also chipped in 21, and Darius Bazley had a double-double. In short, this Thunder team will be fun to watch. I mean, between Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Lou Dort, Darius Bazley, Poku, and Theo Maledon, all of these guys are going to be on the court. At least one of them will be on the court at a time, and they're just fun to watch. They're young prospects who just need some time to develop, and if you're into that kind of stuff, the Thunder are a hot spot for it. As for Charlotte, I don't see why LaMelo isn't starting. He finally got on the board in his NBA career as he dropped 13 in last night's game. I see no reason why you shouldn't start him over either Rozier or Graham. I understand they've been there longer and they've been producing just fine, but LaMelo's your future. Get him in the starting lineup. In an early battle of the tanks, the Cavs took down the Pistons in double overtime in a wild finish, and this was behind 32 points from Colin Sexton, as Darius Garland and Andre Drummond both had 20-point double-doubles. And in the losing effort, Jeremy Grant had 28 and 10, and BG also had 26 with 8 threes made. And for the Cavs, they're now 2-0 to start the season. It's been 2 wins against some bottom half teams, but still, it's something to celebrate if you're a Cleveland fan. I bet it won't last very long, but again, it's a hot start to the season with a hot start young team, and there's a lot to be excited about. While the Sexland backcourt catches some fire, Andre Drummond is just an ultimate stat sheet stuffer. His line in this game was 23, 16, 5, 4, and 3. He just does it all on the defensive end. He might not be the perfect fit for a contending team, but he is a guy that can go out there and get you numbers, whether it's, I can't think of the word, stat padding at the end of games, or if it's just nothing at all. I mean, it's just his contract. His contract really just sucks. One thing that upset me for the Cavaliers was Isaac Okoro, their young rookie, who has already made his way into the starting lineup. Only had 4 shot attempts, and I'd like to see those numbers get up, as he's another great young piece on this, just team that is just full of young pieces that should hopefully form some sort of core at some point for them. And as for the Pistons, I will give Jeremy Grant his flowers. He did look like a legit number one option on a team in this game. Again, he's playing for the Pistons in his game against the Cavs, but still 28-10 is a respectable performance for a player who's supposed to be the best player on his team. In Orlando and Washington handled the Wizards behind a big double-double from Nikola Vucevic, while he, Fultz, and Ross also combined for 68 points total. The Markelle Fultz production hours have officially hit. He looks like he's coming into shape as a legit starting talent in the NBA who can also go out there and give you 20 points a night. And I think he's definitely going to be in the discussion for most improved player by the end of the season, obviously as long as he can stay healthy, but he's done a good job of that since that first major injury, so I don't think there'll be any issues there. I'm very excited to see what Markelle Fultz is able to do as he continues to grow. I really hope he can get his shot back because as of now, his shot still just looks absolutely disgusting, but with that being said, he still is being a contributing player on a Orlando Magic team that, again, seems to just be good enough. As for the Wizards, their early season struggles seem to continue as they fall to 0-2. Russell Westbrook notches his second triple-double in as many games, and other than that, he's still just shooting really inefficiently. He had a quote that he came out with after the game where he took a lot of the blame for their rough start, and I don't blame him because Bradley Beal's out here dropping 39 in this game, and they're still losing, although I bet Bradley Beal is used to that after what happened last season. Either way, I still think this Wizards team has a lot of potential and should pretty handedly be a back half playoff team, or at least in the play-in games. But they do have some things to figure out. Obviously, you have to adjust to Russ. Russ has to adjust to Washington. The same thing happened in Houston last year where it took Russ a couple of months to get into shape, into the system, all that good stuff. So I'm holding back my doubts for the Wizards as, again, it's early. It's only been 2 games. And I really hope they can improve. The Sixers get past the Knicks pretty handedly behind a 27-point double-double from Joel Embiid. And in talking about Embiid, he just looks very locked in to start off the season. With Doc Rivers coming in as the new head coach, it is looking like Embiid has found some sort of reasoning and just some motivation behind him as he seems really set into the season on being a top team in the East. Him and Ben Simmons, they seem to finally have a good team built around them that they can go out and win with, very reminiscent of I want to say it was the 2016, 2017 maybe season. I don't know if I'm thinking of the wrong year entirely, but there was one year where they actually were a productive team back when they had JJ Redick on the squad. And it's having the same looks of that as, Seth Curry finally got going tonight. If him and Danny Green can produce at their usual levels, this Sixers team could definitely be dangerous, especially with Shake Milton and Tyrese Maxey off the bench just being able to come in, be playmakers, or score the ball. It's literally looking like a good team, and Doc Rivers, who I wasn't a huge fan of when he originally signed to Philadelphia, he seems to be doing a good job so far. And for the Knicks, Julius Randle had 25, Alec Burks had 22 off the bench. RJ Barrett had a pretty rough game after a great game in his first game of the season. He shot 2 of 15 from the field, but that wasn't even the worst thing that happened to the Knicks tonight. There was, at one point in the game, Reggie Bullock and Mitchell Robinson were both wearing number 23, at least on their backs. Bullock still had 25 on the front, but I'm pretty sure this is in some way sacrilegious to the Jordan stands. I don't quite know yet, but yeah, it was typical Knicks stuff. And in Chicago, the Chicago Bulls get blown out yet again by the Indiana Pacers. This one was never really close. Domantas Sabonis led the way with a triple-double, which is just amazing for Sabonis. And then other than that, TJ Warren, Malcolm Brogdon, and Victor Oladipo combined for 63 points in the win. And specifically, Oladipo is now strung together 2 20-point games to open the campaign. All of that on efficient shooting numbers as well. And if Oladipo can simply just keep up this level of production, or at least somewhere close to it, I see no reason why his trade value won't shoot up, and he will be out of Indiana as soon as he wants to. And I think that's what he's wanted. I know he's been denying it for quite some time now, but it seems like it's going to happen at some point, and if he keeps on playing like this, it certainly will. And when it comes to Domantas Sabonis, I feel very comfortable calling him a top 3 big man in the East. He might even be number 2 when, I think there's a discussion to be had between him and Bam Adebayo. Sabonis he was a first-time All-Star last season. He just continues to kill it so far into this season, whereas Bam is certainly a great player. They have different styles to the game, obviously Bam being a bit more defensive, Sabonis being a bit more offensive, but I think the discussion is there. And for the Bulls, this was just a mess of a night. no one had a good game. Denzel Valentine had your best game of any players on the Bulls team, and I'm just going to leave it at that. The Spurs outlasted the Raptors behind 27 points from DeMar DeRozan, a triple-double from DeJounte Murray, and 21 from Patty Mills off the bench. Meanwhile, Fred VanVleet dropped 27 and almost had a game-tying 3 late in the fourth quarter, but unfortunately it went in and out. With the Spurs now being 2-0 and the Raptors 0-2, it's definitely, this game was just, I think it was a little bit of the Raptors being worse than what people imagined they'd be, and the Spurs being better than what people imagined they'd be. And a large part of that is due to the fact that these young Spurs really seem like they are ready to be starters and ready to play. Obviously, DeJounte Murray already got his big extension, and he's showing that he's worth it. Having a triple-double, he's just such a great glue guy, role player, just fits right into that mold. Keldon Johnson has looked amazing in the starting role. Lonnie Walker's also looked amazing in his starting role. And, I mean, they're all really young. I think they're going to be able to grow together, learn from DeRozan, learn from Aldridge, and the Spurs might be back in the playoffs before we even know it. And at the end of the day, DeRozan is just still that guy. He had 11 points in the fourth quarter, including shooting 2 of 2 from 3. So I guess Popovich finally got into his head that for this season, DeRozan's going to be back on his BS, just shooting threes again, and he's just such a pure scorer. I love watching DeRozan play, and again, he has still got it. And on the Raptors side of things, bench player Chris Boucher had himself a pretty impressive stat line. He had a double-double, 22 points and 10 rebounds, and he also had 7 blocks, so he's another young guy that the Raptors have been developing for quite some years now, and if he's finally ready to take off and take a leap, it'll be huge for the Raptors in the later year, or in the coming years, and that, this year, I don't expect the Raptors to be that much of contenders, but if Chris Boucher and other guys can step up, then this is just going to be amazing for them, in a few seasons. In Utah, the Jazz got upset by the Timberwolves behind 25 from D'Angelo Russell, and a double-double from Karl Anthony Towns. Donovan Mitchell and Jordan Clarkson both got off the slow starts, and they weren't able to stage the second half comeback, although they put in a very good bid. And I mean, overall, this was just an off night for the Utah Jazz. Donovan Mitchell, Bojan Bogdanovic, they both just had some pretty rough shooting nights, and because of that, with those guys being the top 2 scorers on the Utah Jazz, that's just the recipe for a loss, unfortunately. And as for the Timberwolves, we can't deny the fact that they're 2-0 now. The same thing happened last season. I remember specifically the infamous tweet about that the Timberwolves Twitter team sent out that basically said that the Timberwolves are going to be a good team, maybe even a playoff team. And from that point on, their season just went so downhill, and they barely won any games after that. So I'm waiting for that same moment to happen, because the Timberwolves have had it was a legit win to beat the Jazz, but tonight they're playing the Lakers, and we should figure out a lot more about what this team exactly has to offer, and we'll go from there. In Sacramento, the Kings yet again hold on for a close win at the end of the fourth quarter behind De'Aaron Fox's 24 and double-doubles from both Marvin Bagley and Harrison Barnes. Somehow, someway, this Kings team just continues to win games, whether it be tip-ins at the buzzer or just holding off a Suns team that has been red hot as of late. Devin Booker still had 26, and Chris Paul had his first double-double in a Suns uniform, and it was just an off night for the Phoenix Suns. There wasn't really anything to point out with them, had anything that was really a struggle. They just didn't shoot that well, had some turnover issues, and it just wasn't the best game for them. Their bench didn't really produce that much either. They will be having a rematch tonight, so it'll be interesting to see how the Suns bounce back after losing their first game in almost 300 days, so yeah, that's also just a weird fact. As for the Kings, De'Aaron Fox still has a little ways to go, and there's still some things he does wrong, but I think this season and for the coming seasons, he's really going to show that he was worth every penny of that big extension he got in this offseason. He's really just a special player, and since he's playing well, the other good players around him on the Kings are also seeming to play well. Rashawn Holmes is a legit starting center. Buddy Hield's one of the best shooters in the league. I really love what they have in Tyrese Halliburton, and that even when he doesn't exactly fill up the stat sheet, he still has a huge impact on what happens in the game. And finally, getting to what was probably the game of the night, last game to even end the last night, it was the Trailblazers and the Rockets. CJ McCollum drops 44, Damian Lillard drops 32, and the Blazers take the win in overtime despite James Harden dropping 44 and 17, while Christian Wood also added 31 and 13, and it was just insane shot making and plays throughout the entire game. Unfortunately, Harden had the game losing turnover on the last possession of the game, and it was very un-Harden-like, but I mean, for Harden to come in, have the crazy offseason he had, then go into quarantine for 4 days, and then immediately come back and just hop into his season debut and come out and drop 44 and 17 on what felt like just any normal day at the office for James Harden. That's just the type of player he is. I understand that there are some teams who would want to hold back from making a trade for him, but there's just, when it comes to basketball, there's no player that should be unavailable for James Harden. I mean, no, obviously there are a few, but in terms of what a realistic trade would look like, there are no players that should be unavailable on any team for James Harden. And not to mention that Christian Wood is just, he looks legit. I know it's only one game into his Rockets career, but he looks like such a legit talent. And I know you can hate on me all you want for the comparison, but the comparisons are true. Him and Anthony Davis just have such similar and identical movements on an NBA court. It really is crazy to go look at it, and I urge you to go look at it if you are doubting me, because their bodies just simply move the same. Christian Wood is a legit scorer, a legit rim protector. He was such a great signing for the Houston Rockets to get him for, I think it was 3 years, $40 million. That was just absurd. And not to mention as well, all of John Wall, Eric Gordon, and Boogie Cousins didn't even play in this game, and the Rockets still looked like an unstoppable team for the most part. So I'll say it again, once everyone is healthy, if they can stay healthy, if James Harden ends up staying and not getting traded, this Rockets team is going to be a legit threat in the Western Conference. And for the Blazers, this was a prime example of why they have thrown away any trade ideas involving Damian Lillard or CJ McCollum for the past couple of seasons, because any given night, these two can go out and win you a game all by themselves. And while a lot of the Trailblazers hype from the offseason has seemed to die down a little bit, I still think they're going to be a very solid team in the West, and I'm still on board with the Damian Lillard MVP train. And overall, this is still the best Trailblazers team that we've seen over the past couple of seasons. Yes, they might not be as good as we originally thought they would be, but I mean, if Dame and CJ can keep on playing at this level, they're going to be a pretty unstoppable duo, as they always have been. Whew, and that is all for the December 26th games. We have another 10-game slate coming in on Sunday today, so these long-winded videos, I understand they may be long. That's why I add the timestamps for your convenience, so you can skip around and see what you want to see. But outside of that, leave some comments down below on what you thought about these games. Other than that, leave a like if you enjoyed this video or want to see some more NBA content like this. And outside of that, as always, most importantly, thank you for watching.